And welcome to another episode of the Money and Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Sheryka Alford, and she is.
Anntricia Bray-Smith, the one and only.
Yes, she is. And we are here to provide you with motivation to get out of debt, build wealth, and transform your outlook towards life. Now, on the previous episode, we discussed 7 ways to improve your financial health. And just to recap, those 7 ways were practice gratitude, get organized, pull your credit report, prioritize your debts and pay more than the minimum balance, confirm that you have appropriate insurance, and update your beneficiary information on your existing insurance policies and accounts, create a spending plan and track your spending, and last but not least, cancel any unused subscriptions and reduce services where possible.
Which brings us up to what we promised. We're continuing these tips as we have 7 more ways to improve your financial health for you today in this broadcast. Uh, hey, you should already be implementing some of those that you've already heard in the first 7 from last broadcast, but nonetheless, 7 more today. And if you're like me and it just took so much mentally and emotionally out of you, I mean, come on, let's face it, anything worth having is going to cost us something. So emotionally, I'm all in for the long haul. Let's get to it. So this would be tip number 8 for improving your financial health or your financial relationships, however you want to look at it. Establish or increase your emergency fund. Let me just stop right there. Up until 2020, I had no earthly idea what an emergency fund was, nor what it looked like. And then I wondered, where in the heck is the funds going to come from? So tell us, what is an emergency fund and what does that look like even for some of the poorest of us?
Okay, so an emergency fund. This is basically money that you have saved to cover an unexpected occurrence, something unexpected. For example, a sudden job loss or decrease in your household income, or if you have to take an unexpected trip. If there's a loss or death in your family and you have to buy a plane ticket or a bus ticket or whatever the case may be. An emergency fund is to cover, just like it says, emergencies. Now, I don't mean, that 2-hour sale that they're having a buy one, get one half off tennis shoe special at the mall. That is not what this is for. The emergency fund is for real emergency, something that's critical, for you to have that money available to help prevent you from going into debt or reduce the amount of debt that you would have to incur. So that's what an emergency fund is. And so last week we discussed creating a spending plan and tracking your spending. Now you were wondering, well, hey, where do I get the money from to put in this fund? It goes back to tracking your spending. If you're tracking your spending, to identify places where you can cut back or reduce spending, that's how you can kind of pull back. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just consistent. If you consistently have, say, $10 each paycheck or $20 each paycheck set aside into this emergency fund, then after a while, you'd be surprised as to how it adds up.
So let me just also say, this is not an emergency fund that is kept in a bank or something somewhere. This is something that's actually kept tangible, um, that you can get to.
Well, now as far as I keep my emergency fund in a bank account. However, what works for me is to have it set aside in a bank account that's separate from the institution that I keep the money that I pay my bills from. My emergency fund, they have so I would recommend keeping your emergency fund in an account that's separate from where you keep your money that you pay your day-to-day living expenses. Me personally, I keep my emergency fund in a online savings account, and a lot of times the online savings accounts, in addition to, it not being as easily accessible for me, they also pay higher interest rates to you by keeping your money there. So that's something to look into. Now, emergency funds, it's not something that, hold on. I would recommend keeping your emergency fund in an account that's separate from the account that you keep the money for your regular monthly expenses. Me personally, I keep mine in an online bank account, so I can gain access to it, but I do realize that it's going to be like a 3 to 5 business day situation, which is good because it keeps me from being tempted to like, I'll take money out and I'll just pay it back, even though it's not really for an emergency. So I would keep it in a bank account, just not the same one that you keep your regular money. And you don't want to like invest your emergency fund and tie it up, because with investments, there are some risk involved and you may need that money at the time that, maybe the investment's not doing as well. So just keep it in a regular savings account somewhere, but just not with money that you would normally just go into each month.
All right, all right. Number 9, establish sinking funds. Okay, and then we just where are we gonna get all these funds from?
Well, that, it goes back to that tracking and actually setting up a plan. Now, a lot of this, I know it sounds overwhelming, but if you really sit down and do the work and set up a plan, then you can see, uh, where you have that wiggle room. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen overnight, but these are just things to work towards.
Yeah, I was just sitting here and I was thinking, because I know where I start from, being well over $70,000 in debt, making $30,000 a year. Um, and just starting somewhere. So, I mean, you're listening to these tips. These are ways to improve, but we know we're all at different levels financially. So just start with where you are and what you're capable of doing. And with that being said, just start.
Yes.
Just start. Small, simple, practical changes make a greater impact over time. So don't think that you have to implement all this right now and do all this right now. You may not be at that place. There are some things here that we have listed that maybe she's already tried and implement, but I'm just getting started. And so consider where you are, but all that matters is that you adopt small, simple, practical changes and habits that you can do right now, because we can all do something right now. Implement that and begin to change the direction or change the wellness as it relates to our financial habits. So we're talking today about we're discussing 7 more ways to improve your financial health here on the Money and Mindset podcast. We appreciate you guys joining us today. Previously, we talked about 7 other steps. We're on the last 7 tips that we have for you today. Today, we've talked about establishing and increasing your emergency fund. Now we're talking about the sinking funds. And I'm all funded out right now. You know, I'm at that to where I'm just like, okay. So sinking funds. What is a sinking fund? I mean, you're sitting here and you're talking about the sinking fund, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise as it relates to finances. But I don't know that I really get what sinking funds are.
Okay, great question. So, previously we just talked about an emergency fund, and an emergency fund is to cover those unexpected occurrences.
Mhm.
Sinking funds, they are funds, monies that you set aside to cover the non-regular expenses. So it's not an unexpected expense. For example, my insurance, we pay once a year because we save money that way. But I don't just wait until December and say, "Oh, I have to come up with this big amount of money to pay for this insurance bill." What I do is I know that I'm going to have to pay set amount for my annual insurance. So throughout the year, I'm putting back a little bit every month so that once it's time to pay that insurance bill, I'll have it. So the emergency fund is for unexpected expenses. Sinking funds, it's for you to Christmas. We know Christmas comes around every year at the same time, right? So I know a lot of times we get caught up, we get caught up sometimes, and come January, February, March, April, May, we still trying to pay off Christmas that happened in December. So that's another something that you can set back a sinking fund for. It's like, okay, I'm saving this $5, whatever, to pay towards the holidays. So that's what sinking funds are for.
Okay, I understand, and I guess prior to this, I didn't consider those yearly fees that I have, like renewing of my professional licenses and
Hmm.
things like that. So rather than being up to that point to where these licensures are due and wondering where this income is going to come from,
Hmm.
uh, we know what that amount is going to look like. So divide it up into 12-month payments, have it
Hmm.
put back so that when that time comes around to renew those licensures, or then it's already there. So we
Hmm.
plan ahead. That does take a big chunk out of the mental side of wondering where's this money going to come from. So
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, listening to this saying, "Oh, I got this fun, I got this fun," it does sound overwhelming, but if you really look at it, it's actually liberating,
Hmm.
because the whole debt, it's a cycle.
Hmm.
It's a cycle. And so in order for us to be able to break the cycle of debt, we have to be intentional and sit down and plan
Hmm.
in advance. And so by you saying, for example, if you own a car, I'm sure at some point in time, and that's one of the steps coming up, it's if you own a car, at some point you're going to have to pay for some car maintenance. So you can just say, okay, maybe I'll just sit back a little bit here, there, and it may not be enough to cover the full amount, but it's there. So that's what the sinking funds are.
Sounds great. Tip number 10.
Would you look at that? Keep up with routine vehicle maintenance.
Man.
So it's time for me to get an oil change right now as we speak. And I guarantee you that will happen because, and while I'm due for a maintenance check, my oil change, I feel more comfortable paying to have my oil change than having to pay for what I would have to pay for if I don't. Does that make sense?
So much sense, girl. I got several vehicles, and a couple of them sitting out there on the yard now needing a motor or clacking or something. So yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. 30, 40, $50 oil change compared to a 1,000, 2,000,
Ooh.
$3,000 motor, and other repairs that could have been avoided. You really have to weigh it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So true. And
Right.
so next, start or increase your retirement account contributions. Now,
I
again,
ain't gonna retire. Let's just look. I ain't gonna retire. I'm gonna just stop you. I ain't gonna retire.
Well, while I may not retire, technically, I want to have some fun, sit back for me to play and have fun with
Absolutely, absolutely. No, go on and
in
talk to
my
us about that,
golden age.
because I was just talking to a young lady yesterday about this start or increase in a retirement fund. People are talking to her about retirement funds, and I don't know. I just have a different perspective on that. But let's talk a little bit about that, especially for a young lady fresh out of college. What does that look like? Starting a retirement fund. What do you suggest, especially for so many jobs now? They're not offering retirement. They don't have a plan for you. What should or what advice would you give that young boy or that young girl who's working this job that does not offer a retirement plan?
Okay, well, first, let me just give you my disclaimer. Advice I don't give because I'm not qualified to give advice. However, I will provide you with information for entertainment purposes, and it's up to each of us to do our due diligence and seek professional assistance if that's what we need. However, from my own personal experience, so let's say if you work somewhere and they don't offer say a 401k or anything like that, another option that you have, you could reach out to one of the brokerages, and you can open up, say, a Roth IRA, which is a individual retirement account. That is an option. Um, there are limits as far as like the contribution limits. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but basically what it is with the Roth, you make contributions from money that you've already been taxed on. So you invest in your Roth with the money that's already been taxed on, and then that money grows tax free, so to speak. And whenever you hit the applicable age, you can withdraw that and the earnings without paying tax because you've already paid the taxes on it. So a Roth IRA is something that you can look into. So look that up and get information on that. And honestly, the sooner you start, the sooner you start, the better. If you are in your 20s, even if you are in your teens right now, if you are a teenager and you have a job working at, Brahms or wherever somewhere, you are eligible to start investing in a Roth IRA. It's just that you're not allowed to invest any more than what you bring in. You limit or start investing, and the sooner that you start, the less that you have to invest later, and it has more time to grow. So that's my 2 cents on that.
But doing something is better than nothing. So yes,
Mhm.
I definitely agree with that. What what's with the 401k now? Let's just talk about that, because I know many people have been forced into retirement as a result of the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, with just the economy making some drastic shifts, many people were uh, losing jobs and having to cash in 401ks or whatever. What direction is 401k going in?
Man, I mean, it's just bad business. It's all bad. you know, um, I know that, and I mentioned earlier that I had taken a loan from my 401k. This was way had nothing to do with the pandemic or anything like that. It's just something that I needed at that time, and it worked better mathematically for us. But I will say, when I saw that they were allowing people to deduct from their 401k as a result of the pandemic, I I understood it because in some cases, okay, yeah, it was necessary, but in my mind, I was like, if all possible, don't do it. Because even though you can take that money out, you got to pay it back in. And now at this time, we're we're in a time to where I say we're at the probably the highest money making years of our lives, because that money that you set in your retirement account, it's there for you to use whenever you're no longer making money at the rate that you are currently, or as able bodied in mind as you are now. So why things may be tight, maybe instead of, if at all possible, instead of going into that 401k, maybe you could find another means to get more income, a different route, just basically a last resort.
Absolutely. I agree. Maybe that's a topic we need to just break down also, along with the insurance by itself. And let's really dig into that,
Mm-hmm.
because many of us, we've been on jobs for years and we have a 401k, and we really don't understand what that looks like, um, and the penalties that we
Mm-hmm.
face when we have to um, borrowing our own money, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. So let's look at that as being another topic all by
Definitely.
itself, and let's just make that a plan moving forward. Nonetheless, we're moving right along to number 12. Look like continue to educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're here
Ah.
listening to us on the Money and Mindset podcast, this is what it's all about. We're here to make sure that we keep uh, the business as it relates to your money and our mindsets. You know, we're here to educate you. We're talking about it in real time. We're real people just like you, dealing with real financial and mindset issues and struggles and hardships and the good and the bad and the ugly all together. So continue to educate yourself. That is so important. And one thing that I would like to add to continuing to educate yourself is to understand that we're in 2020. We're moving into 2021. You have no excuses for not knowing what you need to know. Whether you're getting it from this podcast, there's 100 more out there. Whether you're researching the net, whether you're uh, sitting in a classroom in a webinar, uh, whatever, you have no excuse for not getting the knowledge and implementing the plans into your life that you need to advance and get to your next level, guys. So
Yes, so true. And if you're into reading blogs, I have a blog site that you can visit, www.theproactiveplanner.com. But also there's www.personalfinanceblogs.com. If you go to that site and just type in whatever subject you want to read about, there's just a plethora of information. So there's information out there that's readily available.
absolutely. And hey, if you're just working on a plan to dig out of debt, YouTube have some shows that are up there.
Mhm.
That's where I started. I didn't want to have no talk about money, but it empowered me to see other people's issues with money, and to be able to look at that and say, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. Let me
Mhm.
develop a plan. I don't need her to come in and do my plan. Let me do my own. So, hey, we have no excuse. It's all kind of ways we learn, and whatever that looks like for you, just so that you can uh, understand your money and what that looks like. Then, by all means, get yourself in a place. One thing for sure, if you can't continue to do what you have done and expect to make better progress, because you're not. You're going to have to get intentional and change those habits as it
Mhm.
relates to your money. 13, find ways to generate more income.
Hmm. Yes, yes. You I have to laugh because I'll admit that the whole finding ways to generate more income, depending upon how you're wired, it may not come as easy for you as for others. And what I mean by that is if you're someone like me that's accustomed to, okay, I'm going to go to this job, this 9 to 5, I'm going to do my job and get my check and my benefits, I'm going to go home. And then you have a sister like Miss Anntricia Bray-Smith trying to convince you to break out, use your creativity, and monetize. And you're like, what? Do what?
Yeah, yeah. And you can look at that in several different ways, guys, but we are all created with a seed of greatness, talent, business inside of us. Now, you take that how you want. Everyone has different talents. Some of us have more, some have less, but you possess inside of you that extra income. Sometimes it just takes being in an environment or being around people to press you enough or to
Mhm.
impose upon you enough what that is, what it looks like, and to help get it out of you.
Mhm.
So this is not something going and look on to work on somebody else's job, giving up another 30, 40 hours of your time that you could be spending with your family uh, every week. No, we give enough out there. We give enough 40, 50, 60 hours. We don't have another 30, 40, 50, 60 hours to give. Because when we give that, we're missing out on the important things like our family, being able to enjoy our lives because we're out searching for revenue, searching for income. And so, no, I don't suggest that. So I don't get excited when a young single mom come tell me she's taking on another shift, or that she's having to work overtime, or she's getting a new job, another job on top of the three she already has. No, I don't get excited about that. What I will get excited about is for that single mom or that woman telling me that, hey, she's got a new business idea and she's ready to put it into action. Yeah, because that is the income that I would think that would help improve your financial health, your financial resources, your financial relationships, not somebody else's job. You're doing and building up somebody else's dream when your dream is lying dormant inside of you. So it's about understanding what it is that you do well and what you can contribute to generate that income, that seed that you're born with. We're all born with it, no matter how minimum it seems, no matter how insignificant it seems to us. We're all born with that gift. And it's just a matter of being in a place, in an environment where you can allow your creativity to blossom.
Yes, yes. Back to that community and the connections, all the things.
And I don't think it no different. You were talking to me about money. I didn't want to hear about money, but I was talking to you about mindset and about what we have inside of us. You probably didn't want to hear that because it takes us out of our comfort zone. Talking
Right.
about things and being introduced to things that we're not privy to, that's uncomfortable,
And being
and
more
so,
social.
oh yeah, for sure. Well, yeah,
You know,
I think we
you know
both
that's
had
my
that
problem.
issue. I think we got
Yes.
that from daddy, them daddy issues.
Yeah, beer. Yeah, yeah. So
so,
it's it.
so you,
We are all a work in progress, and we are all here to encourage each other to improve and to move forward and do better.
absolutely. So find ways that you can generate more income. We ain't talking about getting out there trying to be a multi-million millionaire and all that kind of stuff. We're just talking about that little extra that can help meet the needs that you have without putting you in a time constraint,
Hmm.
without pulling you away from your family, without taking that time that you can delegate yourself. Build your own wealth.
Yes.
Last but not least today, take media breaks.
Uh, Not from the Money and Mindset podcast. That is not what we mean. When we say media breaks, it kind of ties back to number one in last week's episode, the whole practicing gratitude and being thankful. Sometimes we look at too much media, Instagram, and reality shows and all the other things that implant these ideas and images in our minds that make us feel like, I'm blessed because I don't have X, Y, and Z. It will help us to take media breaks,
Absolutely.
reduce that.
things that are not adding value to us. It goes all the way back to that. Things that are drawing us in emotionally and not really having no long-term value to us, because I can tell you I'm a world worse. You let Housewives of Atlanta or Married to Medicine or something like that come on TV and I'm all glued in. But guys, that's not necessarily going to benefit us one way or another. All it is clogging up our brain when we could be here intentional, sitting at the table, putting our bills together for the next month, or
Or a
watching some
spending
kind.
plan.
Yeah, so it is what it is. But yeah, we need a break, and it's about refreshing that mindset. We have so much baggage, so much strain, so many stressors that are going in that sometimes we don't take time to detox that, to see what it looks like and come look at our finances with fresh eyes, with a
Mhm.
fresh ideas, and with a fresh mindset. And so it's what it's all about.
Yep.
So we've been here over the course of a couple tapings talking about ways to improve your financial health. Uh, it's important, and it was a good reminder, even for me, even for I know Sheryka. Just good reminders are good, refreshing, and it even triggers some things in me emotionally with some of these financial tips and things like that, guys. But it's good that we can come together and talk about it and just have a refresh. And now we can go back and, with fresh eyes, with a new perspective, taking a look at how our money relationships also affects our mindsets and our personal relationships as well. They're all tied together.
Yep.
Uh, so we appreciate you being here with us and joining us for another Money and Mindset podcast. Until next time, I am Anntricia Bray-Smith.
And I
She
am
is.
Sheryka Alford.
We'll see you next time.